Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you, City and State, for bringing us all together. As the Deputy Mayor mentioned, some of you may have a little tough commute this morning. Talk to me about a tough commute. I got in from Buffalo, and my plane was an hour and a half late, so I boarded the one to go to LaGuardia. I went over to JFK an hour and 20 minutes later. I'm here. And if I didn't have a guy who pretends he's my husband for 32 years waiting at home, I might have actually had the sense to stay overnight here last night. That's what I'll do next time. The state of women in New York State. Well, I'll tell you what. It's a hell of a lot better than it is in every other state. That's the good news. That is absolutely the good news. And for the rest of the women and the rest of the country, I feel their pain. But let's just talk briefly about what we all have as beneficiaries of living in such an enlightened and progressive state, state of New York. First of all, I hope that you're proud that your state has the most generous paid family leave program in the nation. How about that? We have the highest minimum wage, which 70% of minimum wage earners happen to be women. So we've got the highest minimum wage to offer women the dignity of trying to not be in poverty, below the poverty level when they work 40 hours a week. We just, in our most recent budget, doubled the child care tax credit, realizing how tough it is on families to make ends meet while they're taking care of their kids. We have pay equity. When you think about that wage gap, we all know it's 78 cents to the dollar. Well, in New York State, it's 90 cents to the dollar. Now it's got to get to 100. Let's get that. We're not done, but it is significantly better than it is elsewhere. Our fight for reproductive health. You would think your governor was a woman himself. He is seriously. I think Matilda and his sisters and Sandra Lee and his daughters and all of his nieces have a profound influence on our governor, which is why I'm so proud to work with him, because he talks about issues that women talk about all the time as well. And so when we're talking about fighting Washington, which he's sent me to do many times, taking on the battles on the Affordable Care Act, we are doubling down in your own state to protect reproductive rights, protect Planned Parenthood, and protect access to good health care. So that is what's going on in your own state. In addition to these issues that the governor has asked me to work on, he also asked me to work on the initiative to combat sexual assault on college campuses, which when you realize 1 out of 5 young women is a victim of sexual assault, and actually young men are as well, I was very proud to make sure that we had, again, the most aggressive program plan in the nation. So that's all with sort of a snapshot of your own state. That's good. But let me tell you where we're falling short. Like many industries represented in this room, I see Sandra Wilkin is here, and it's kind of still lonely in the construction development industry. Sandra, I know that. I know from our DOT commissioner, Polly Trottenberg, not a lot of people in DOT, not in that world, in your transportation world. Maria Volo is here as well, and not as many women as we'd like to see in leading the insurance and the finance industries. How many female CEOs of big corporations there? And it was great to hear the deputy mayor, but there aren't a lot of deputy mayors around. There aren't a lot of female mayors around. So I consider that a problem. I consider that a problem. Not that we cannot have enlightened men at the top, as we do in some cases, but when you think about the perspective that women bring from our own life experiences, it is essential that in order to have this country properly represented with the heart and passion that women bring to it, we need more women in the corridors of power, whether it's the boardroom or the halls of Congress. And so I'll give you a couple snapshots from my own story, if you'll bear with me, to tell you why I'm guilty of some of the things I'm going to talk about myself. Now, just quickly, I started, as I mentioned, up in Buffalo this morning. That's where I started my life. My parents lived in a trailer outside the Bethlehem steel plant where my dad worked, so modest beginnings, but we were raised with a good consciousness of other people and social conscious. And so I grew up really caring about other people despite our own humble beginnings. And that led me to being a high school kid, taking an hour bus ride to downtown Democratic headquarters, where I stuffed envelopes and worked with people like Tim Russert. Tim was cutting his teeth in politics in Erie County, and there was this guy who thought he should be senator of New York named Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who'd never run for office before, and we jumped on board, and Tim and he's teaching me how to write press releases, and we're tag teaming because no one thought this was going to happen. So I really worked really in the trenches with some outstanding individuals at a very early age. I guarantee I was the youngest and the only female ever to walk in those doors to help out the Democratic Party way back when. So I kind of got used to being the only woman even earlier in my life. But that led me to other positions. I did have an opportunity to go to law school and actually be counsel to that senator later in life, in my 20s, when I was old in my 20s, and had done a lot of things. And so I'll just fast forward to when I ran for office, because this is where I almost screwed up. I had 2 children. I was working on Capitol Hill and trying to balance family life there. And when you talk about family life balance, those of you who are younger, it really only happens when they go off to college. I hate to break it to you. There's no such thing as real balance. Let's just get that illusion out of there. When I think of family life balance, I still have this image of me when I had one baby on a hip. That's balance. I'm on the phone talking to a client because I'm trying to pretend I've got a home business that I'm trying to pretend is not at my house with a baby crying. And my husband's boss is coming to dinner, so I'm trying to make dinner, talking to a client, got a baby on the hip. You've all been there. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know and have felt. But that's why I really like paid family leave and child care tax credits. But that's my own perspective. So balance, I did all these things. I helped start some businesses, did a lot of work. So I go back home, go back to my hometown of Buffalo to raise the kids. And I don't like what's going on in my hometown. There's a big Walmart coming. It's going to hurt the little businesses. I got to fight. I'm taking petitions to town board meetings. I'm the crazy lady social activist, always showing up, fighting something or other, fighting for the environment, fighting for character of our town. I was like just getting this reputation, like always having my big mouth open. That's okay. So I go to town board meetings, and all of a sudden there's an opening for a position on town board. Now this is as low as it gets. I mean, this is lower than your city councilman. This is way down there. We're down there with dog catcher level. Like this is entry level position for government, okay? Now I'm 35, 2 kids, have helped start corporations, have my own business, been counsel to a senator, served as an attorney, big law firm in DC for a while, social activist, community activist. So I did a couple of things by the time I was 35. I did not think that I had the qualifications to run for an opening for town board, because maybe I needed a little more seasoning. Maybe I need to start with school board first. Maybe I just don't have what it takes. And I was always behind the scenes. I mean, I wrote things for Senator Moynihan. Now, he changed every word. He was really good on his own. But I was used to working for other people and building up the men I worked for. Okay, does that sound familiar? So all of a sudden, this was the game changer in my life. This 22-year-old guy, just out of school, living with his mom and dad, never had a mortgage, never paid a tax, never had a real job. He steps up and says, I'm running for town board. I'm like, holy smokes. Now, this kid was same age as my baby brother. They had gone to grade school together. It's like, what makes him at 22 have the confidence that I don't have at 35? You're all nodding your heads, aren't you? Okay, yeah, you've been there. So I was the one who almost held myself back. Now, here's what the good news was. There ended up being 2 seats open. We both run. We both win. And I'll tell you who was wrong in that scenario when I almost did. That young man had well-placed confidence. We worked together for 14 years. He is now the CEO of a billion-dollar healthcare organization in Western New York. He knew he had something. I was the one who held myself back. And I don't want to see that anymore. This is the story I tell young women. Where are the 22-year-old young women out of college who say, I've got what it takes, I've got a heart, I can do this? Those are the women I want to help. So needless to say, you can probably guess this, I was the only woman on my town board. But the very next time there was a vacancy, I went through hell and high water to make sure that vacancy was filled by a woman. Because the guy's like, we have a woman. We have enough now. Really? Really? So I fought, and they said, well, her husband, the woman I wanted, eminently qualified. Her husband's on the police department. There might be conflicts. I said, get out of here. I said, you don't want to deal with me if you don't put her on, okay? You do not want to go there. In fact, the conservative talk show host on the radio that knows me well has called me an iron fist and a velvet glove. I can look real sweet, but don't mess with me in the streets. So I got this woman on. So therefore we had 2 out of 4 were women in our town. Then I run for higher office for county level, county clerk. I was the only woman in that position, highest ranked woman in that position. Then I run for Congress, in a seat that people said you have no chance in hell of winning that seat. No chance. Most Republican district in the state, 7 very conservative counties. If you want to know how conservative, 78% of the voters in November went for Donald Trump. Yeah. This is very not New York City, just want you to know. So I'm looking at the numbers. I have no money, no name recognition, no chance of winning. Do I run for Congress 6 years ago? Now, here's what I made the mistake of doing. I looked at my 21-year-old daughter and asked her that question. Yeah, she looks up at me and I said, Katie, I could run for county executive. I could run for something else, a lot easier. They know me. Or Congress. And she looks up to me and says, Mom, Congress, duh. You have to do Congress, right? So now I've really set myself up because now I cannot disappoint this daughter that I've raised to be strong and independent. So she's asking whether her mom has got the guts or whether she's crazy enough to do something that is literally impossible. Well, thank God for Paul Ryan at the time. He brought a budget that I was able to lean into heavily. We ran a national race. I won that seat exactly 6 years ago yesterday. Stunned the political world and stunned everybody except my husband and my kids who actually had a lot of faith in me. But that, again, told me, you've got to be in it to win it. If I had sat there and did the analysis and said, no, this is not going to happen, I never would have been able to go there and fight for my district and have what was really one of the highest honors of my life. Now, 18 months later, because I would not vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act the 34 times it came up, and I also got into a lot of trouble with my Catholic constituencies over the contraceptive mandate, okay? So I ended up losing that seat by a tiny bit. Okay, I lost. And so I'm also a big, firm believer in telling young women that when you get knocked down, you will find a way back up. Because I went off to the private sector, thought my public service was over, and it hurt. It hurt really badly because I missed it. I felt I had a calling to do something for my community, and it was gone. Until 14 months later, I get a call from the governor's office. Would I be his running mate for lieutenant governor? And so I have been the only woman on my town board, county office, won at 20% in Congress, and now the only statewide state official. Senator Gillibrand's a federal official. Thank God we have her. But I know what it's like out there. And I go to businesses in the tech world, and I see women in labor, and I see women in construction, and I see women in politics, and it's lonely out there. And I thought the advice from the deputy mayor was spot on. You need that network. But I also put on all of you, because this is also the 100th anniversary of winning women's right to vote. And there's an incredible history, and I'll come back and talk about it some other time. I could tell you war stories all day, but I have to be in Plattsburgh in 2 hours. Do you know where Plattsburgh is? Montreal is closer. Beautiful part. State's beautiful. 100th anniversary. How I use that is, yes, there's an amazing history. Get up to Seneca Falls, get to Susan B. Anthony's house, cherish it. It's our history. The women's rights movement started in your own state. Get out and learn about it. Go to my website and check it out. But for purposes of today, in the final moment, what I use that for is to say, when you think about those women who took to the streets, does this sound familiar? Stood up against the tides of their time. They were ostracized by their communities, their families. They were arrested for voting. They didn't give up. They did not give up. And my concern is 100 years from now, in the year 2117, when women look back on us, what will they say we accomplished? What will our legacy be? Have we moved and improved the lives of other women? Have we improved their station of life? That is what we have to do, because the torch has been passed to us. What we do with it will define our legacy. So think about that when you have opportunities to encourage women to do the impossible, encourage them in the workplace, encourage them to hang in there, mentor, as you heard the deputy mayor talked about. These are all important. But every one of you should feel some responsibility on your shoulders that you are part of a strong legacy of strong women in the state of New York. But what are you going to do with that torch? It's up to you. Thank you very much.